Hello everyone, welcome back to engpot. In this episode, we'll be discussing an interesting topic in linguistics, morpheme. A morpheme is the smallest meaningful unit that carries a meaning or serves a grammatical function, and it can always be a letter or a group of letters. Take this example, boy. Let's try to divide this word into different parts. Either you can divide it as B and OY or BO and Y, isn't it? Now, in the first division, that is B and OY, the two divided parts are meaningless. They don't perform any grammatical function, isn't it? And in the second division, same. Meaningless, no grammatical sense. Hence, the word boy is a morpheme because it has a meaning and it is indivisible. You can't split this word further. So you can call it as morpheme. Now take another example, boys. Here we can break the word as boy and S. Now you know that boy is a morpheme. Now how about S? S is meaningless, isn't it? And S is a letter, and a letter can't always convey a meaning. But here, S when added to boy denotes a plural form of boy. That is, it pluralizes the word boy, isn't it? So S performs a grammatical function, hence S is also a morpheme. So in this word boys, there are two morphemes, boy and S. Over to another example, teachers. Let's split it as teach, ER and S. Now teach is a morpheme because it is indivisible, it has a meaning on its own, and it is also a verb. Now ER is also a morpheme even though it is meaningless. When attached to teach, makes it meaningful, or it converts a verb form teach to a noun form. So here ER performs a grammatical function, so it is also a morpheme. And finally S. S pluralizes the word teacher. Again, there is a grammatical function, so S is also a morpheme. So the word teachers has three morphemes, teach, ER and S. Here comes a list of words, and let's find out how to divide these words into different morphemes. House. Now house is indivisible, it has a meaning on its own, hence it is a morpheme. So house is a one morpheme word. Photos, we can split it as photo and S. Now photo is indivisible, has a meaning on its own, photo is a morpheme, and S pluralizes the word photo, so it performs a grammatical function, hence S is also a morpheme. So photos is a two morpheme word. Misbehaving. Now misbehaving can be broken down into misbehave and ing. Miss is meaningless, but when attached to behave gives a negative form of behave, isn't it? Now misbehave is the antonym of behave. It is the opposite of behave. So here it performs a function. So miss is also a morpheme. Behave again cannot be split up. So it is meaningful. Hence behave is a morpheme, and ing indicates the present participle of behave. Ing also performs a grammatical function. So this word misbehaving has three morphemes. So it is a three morpheme word. So that's how we can divide a word into different morphemes. Hope you understood what morphemes are. Now it's time for us to discuss the different categories of morphemes, that is free and bound morphemes. First is free morpheme. Now free morphemes can stand by themselves as single words. They are independent. They don't need the support of another word for their existence. For example, wait. Now wait is a morpheme, and it is a free morpheme because it can appear in isolation. It is independent. It has a meaning on its own. Flower, again, it doesn't need the support of another morpheme or to make it meaningful, isn't it? So flower is also a morpheme, and it comes under free morpheme. Garden, again, it has a meaning on its own. It can stand by itself, and it is independent. So garden is also a free morpheme. Now let's take another example, weighted. Now weighted is a word with two morphemes, isn't it? Weight and ed. Now weight is a free morpheme because it is independent. It has a meaning on its own. It can stand alone. Whereas ed is meaningless. It is dependent on another word. Now here it is dependent on weight to make itself meaningful, isn't it? Now ed indicates a past tense of weight. That is how it becomes meaningful when joined to weight. So ed is a bound morpheme. It is because it cannot stand on its own. So ed is a bound morpheme and weight is a free morpheme. Bound morphemes are basically affixes. Now affixes can be divided into prefixes and suffixes, and there are also other affixes like infixes and circumfixes, which we'll discuss in another episode. Here let's concentrate on prefixes and suffixes. A prefix is a letter or group of letters that are attached to the beginning of a word to form a new word. For example, unable. Now un is a prefix here because it is attached to the beginning of the root word able, isn't it? And also it forms a new word because able becomes unable, and the meaning also changes over here. Now you know that it is a two morpheme word and we can divide it as un and able. Now un is a bound morpheme, isn't it? Because it cannot stand alone. It is dependent on the other morpheme able to make itself meaningful. Hence it is a bound morpheme. Now able is a free morpheme because it is independent. It can appear in isolation and it has a meaning on its own. So un is a bound morpheme, and since it is attached to the beginning of another morpheme, it is a prefix. Hence you can call it as bound prefix. Now here are a few more prefixes. Mis in mislead, re in rewrite, dis in disagree, pre in premature, im in immortal, and non in nonsense. So these are all prefixes, also bound morpheme. So you can call it as bound prefixes. Next is suffixes. A suffix is a letter or a group of letters that are added at the end of a word. For example, useful. Full is a suffix because it is added at the end of the root word use. And here we can divide this word as use and full. Use is a free morpheme and full is a bound morpheme, and full comes at the end of the root word, so it is a suffix, and hence we can call it as bound suffix. Another example, writing. Again, write and ing. Ing is a suffix. It comes at the end of write. Accomplishment. Ment is a suffix. Creation is a suffix. Happily, ly is a suffix. So all these suffixes are also bound morphemes. Hence you can call it as bound suffixes. Over to a few more examples of bound morphemes. Gardener. Er is a bound morpheme. Dishonest. Dis is bound. Inactive. In is a bound morpheme. Now the word unfaithful. We can divide this word into morphemes like unfaith and full. Now un is a bound morpheme because it cannot stand alone. It needs to be attached to faith to make itself meaningful. So un is a bound morpheme, and since it is added at the beginning of faith, it is a prefix. Hence it is a bound prefix. Faith can stand alone. It is independent. It has a meaning on its own. So faith is a free morpheme. Now full again is a bound morpheme because it cannot stand alone. It needs to be attached to faith to make itself meaningful or for its existence. Now full is a bound morpheme, and since it is added at the end of faith, it is a suffix. Hence it is a bound suffix. So unfaithful is a three morpheme word with two bound morphemes and one free morpheme. So far we have discussed morphemes and its categories, free morphemes and bound morphemes. Now we'll be discussing its subcategories in another episode. Now if you want to practice more exercises based on this topic, just visit our website engpot.com, and I'm pretty sure that all these exercises will give you a better idea of what morphemes are. You can also go to the description box below to get the link to these exercises. So stay updated. Thanks for your attention and keep learning.